They called him the Zen Master, but even Phil Jackson lost his cool with some players. These are the 6 stars who pushed his patience to the breaking point. Phil Jackson coached many stars in his life, but Shaquille O'Neal might have been the hardest one to handle. Shaq was a giant on the court, full of power and skill, but also full of pride. Phil liked him, but at times he also got tired of him. The 2001 finals were one of those moments. In Game 1 against the Philadelphia 76ers, Shaq dropped 44 points, yet the Lakers still lost. Allen Iverson scored 48, and that didn't sit well with Phil. He looked at the stat sheet and saw something that bothered him. Shaq had 0 blocks. To Phil, that meant his big man was too focused on scoring instead of protecting the rim. He told Shaq straight up that he needed to play defense if they wanted to win. Shaq listened and in the next game turned it up, blocking shots and taking over both ends of the floor. But that didn't mean coaching him was easy, Phil once said. Shaq's pretty hard-headed, there's no doubt about it. Shaq was a mix of strength and stubbornness, and sometimes his focus wasn't where Phil wanted it. He wasn't like Michael Jordan or Kobe Bryant, who lived for every practice. Shaq needed his own space. Some days he was locked in, other days he was joking around, keeping things light. Phil had to find a way to balance patience and pressure with him. He knew Shaq was one of a kind, but that also made him one of the toughest players to guide. Even after their time together, Phil still had issues with Shaq's attitude. When Shaq joined the Miami Heat and faced Kobe Bryant's Lakers, he acted like Kobe didn't exist. The two didn't talk, didn't shake hands, nothing. Reporters asked Phil what he thought, and he didn't hide his disappointment. He said Shaq should have at least acknowledged Kobe. Phil wanted the two to move past their problems, but Shaq stayed silent. That coldness bothered Phil, who always believed in peace and respect between players. Years later, when talking about big men, Phil compared Shaq to Wilt Chamberlain. He said Wilt was more athletic and had better endurance, while Shaq was powerful but couldn't last as long. He called Shaq a post-sprinter, strong in bursts but not built for long stretches. To Phil, Wilt had a wider range of moves, while Shaq's game was mostly power.
With Shaquille didn't have quite the same athleticism that Wilt had. He had the bounce and he had the speed, but he didn't have the endurance.
It wasn't hate, but it showed how Phil always pushed Shaq to be more than just a force. And maybe that was the root of it. Phil saw greatness, but also the limits Shaq refused to break. If there was ever a wild relationship between a coach and a player, it had to be Phil Jackson and Kobe Bryant. Those two were like fire and gasoline, amazing together, but always one spark away from blowing up. When Michael Jordan came back to the NBA in 2001, Kobe was fired up. This wasn't just another game for him. He wanted to go at his idol, one-on-one, show the world he could stand toe-to-toe with the legend himself. But Phil, he hated that idea. He even said before the game, he's been dying to get Michael in a one-on-one situation, and I know that he'll screw it up. Phil didn't want a solo show, he wanted teamwork, discipline, the triangle offense running smooth. The Lakers won that night, but Phil saw what was coming. Kobe wanted freedom, Phil wanted structure. That push and pull never stopped. It got personal. Phil even later said, "I could feel his hatred. Can you imagine your coach saying that about you?" Their bond turned icy. Kobe thought Phil didn't get him, and Phil thought Kobe was too hard to coach. Things got so bad that when Phil left the Lakers, he called Kobe uncoachable in his book. Yeah, he actually wrote that. You can bet Kobe didn't take that lightly. Then 2003 to 2004 rolled around and everything exploded. Kobe got caught up in a huge off-court case, and it shook the whole team. For Phil, it hit a nerve. He said the whole thing made him lose all respect for Kobe. It brought back painful memories from his own life, and he just couldn't look at Kobe the same way. That tension never really went away. Years later, Kobe even joked that he sent Phil to therapy from all the stress he caused him. But here's the crazy part. When Phil came back to coach the Lakers again, he actually worked things out. They talked, they rebuilt trust, and they ended up winning 2 more championships together. Number 3 on the list of players Phil Jackson struggled with the most has to be Scottie Pippen. Phil once said, There's a dark side to him that rarely surfaces, and that pretty much summed up their relationship. Most of the time, Scotty was calm, focused, and the kind of player every coach wanted. But once in a while, something in him would snap, and nobody could really explain it. He got angry, emotional, and unpredictable. Phil's trainer, Chip Schaefer, even joked that Pippen was perfect for most of the year. But for a few days, he became the darkest person you could imagine. Phil saw that side enough times to know it was real. The tension between the two started building during the 1994 playoffs when Michael Jordan had retired, and it was Scotty's team. In one of the biggest moments of the season, Phil drew up the final play for Tony Kukoc instead of Scotty. That decision didn't sit well at all. Scotty refused to go back into the game for the last 1.8 seconds. It shocked everyone. The team won, but Phil never forgot how Scotty quit on his teammates that night. Years later, when asked about it, Pippen said Phil's choice to give the shot to Kukoc was a racial move. That stunned the basketball world. On live television, he said he had no problem calling Phil a racist, repeating it even when pressed. For someone who had won 6 championships under Phil, that was a heavy accusation. It wasn't the only time Scotty spoke harshly about his old coach. When The Last Dance documentary came out, Pippen felt like it gave all the credit to Michael Jordan and ignored the rest of the team. He started lashing out at both MJ and Phil. He said Phil had grown selfish near the end of their run and even blamed him for breaking the team apart. Phil, known for his calm and spiritual approach, had always tried to manage big personalities, but Scotty's moods were harder to control than anyone's. Next up on the list of players Phil Jackson didn't get along with is LeBron James, and their clash was more than just a small misunderstanding. It started with a single word that caused a storm across the basketball world: posse. Back in 2016, Phil Jackson, who was then running the New York Knicks, gave an interview where he talked about LeBron's time with the Miami Heat and his next move back to Cleveland. In that talk, he mentioned how LeBron once wanted to stay an extra night in Cleveland with his mom and his posse. That word hit a nerve. LeBron didn't take it lightly. He said he had lost all respect for Phil Jackson after hearing that, and he meant it. LeBron said he once had respect for Phil, past tense, but that was gone now. He grew up admiring Jackson, respected what he achieved with Michael Jordan and Kobe Bryant, but that single comment changed everything. To LeBron, posse didn't sound like just a random word. It sounded like something used to belittle the group of young black men who helped him build his empire. LeBron spoke calmly but clearly. He said that if Phil was talking about another powerful figure, someone who wasn't black, he wouldn't have used that word. He said it showed how far African Americans still have to go to be seen equally in business and sports. His point was sharp. After over a decade of proving themselves, one careless label still carried a sting. Phil never really apologized or addressed it directly. Instead, he moved on, but the damage stayed. From that day forward, there was no going back. LeBron made it clear he had nothing left for Phil Jackson. Not admiration, not respect, nothing. And that moment became one of the rare times when the game's biggest star stood up not just for himself, but for what he believed was right. At number 5 on the list of players Phil Jackson couldn't quite connect with is J.R. Rider, a gifted scorer whose time with the Lakers turned sour fast. When Rider joined the team in 2000 to the 2001 season, it looked like a strong match on paper. Phil had his championship system, and Rider brought natural talent. But almost from the start, their chemistry was off. Jackson's calm, structured coaching style clashed with Rider's free-spirited personality. Rider felt like Phil didn't trust him or value his game the way he should have, and Jackson quietly questioned whether Rider was fully committed. What began as small differences soon became something deeper after one moment that Rider would never forget.
Phil Jackson, so I get over there, I get with Phil. I get there and I'm just going with the flow and Phil is Phil, he has a style and, cool, laid back, whatever.
It happened during a team meeting in front of everyone as the players were getting ready to leave. Jackson cracked a line that changed everything. He said, "Yeah, you guys have a good day. Hopefully I don't hear about JR being on Crenshaw." The room went quiet for a second. Then a few players laughed, but Rider didn't find it funny at all. He looked straight at Jackson and told him he didn't appreciate that kind of joke. Crenshaw is a well-known area in Los Angeles full of culture and community, and to Rider, that comment sounded like a dig. It felt like Jackson was implying something negative about where he came from. Ryder later said that after that day, he never looked at Jackson the same again. For him, it wasn't just about one joke, it was about what that joke meant. He felt disrespected, as if Jackson saw him through a certain lens instead of as a professional. It reminded many people that Jackson's questionable remarks about black athletes weren't new. Over the years, he had made comments linking hip-hop culture to thuggery and calling NBA players' style prison garb. Ryder's experience felt like another chapter in that same pattern.
One day he says, hopefully we don't see hopefully I don't hear about JR being over on Crenshaw. I said, I don't think none of that's funny. I said, I don't have a problem getting my hair cut, getting Earl's dog, or getting my hair cut on Crenshaw, and then sliding.
Even though there were no big public fights, the distance between them was obvious. Ryder said he still learned a few lessons under Jackson, but the connection was broken. Finally, Dennis Rodman, the most unpredictable player Phil Jackson ever coached. When the Bulls brought him in before the 1995-96 season, people thought it was a disaster waiting to happen. Rodman came in with a reputation: late nights, wild parties, and a habit of doing things his own way. But Phil Jackson, known for his calm and spiritual approach, saw something different. He didn't try to control Rodman like other coaches had. Instead, he tried to understand him. Phil once said, "Dennis is mentally handicapped," not to insult him, but to explain how different Rodman's mind worked. He said Dennis had problems with attention, and that being too strict only made him shut down. The harder you discipline him, the worse it gets, Phil explained. So he gave Rodman patience instead of punishment, and in return Rodman gave him effort. On the floor, he was pure focus, rebounding, defending, and doing the dirty work no one else wanted. Off the floor, though, he was a storm no one could control. Phil also once said, when Dennis went to a bar, all bets were off. Rodman wasn't the kind of guy who partied lightly. If he went out, the night could stretch until morning. Bulls players respected him, but most didn't hang out with him off the court. Jackson understood that. He didn't force Rodman to fit in. He just made sure he delivered when it mattered. Despite the chaos, Rodman knew how to switch on when the cameras were rolling. Phil said, "Things only happen when there are television cameras around," meaning Dennis became a different person in public, louder, crazier, larger than life. But behind closed doors, he was serious about basketball and loyal to the people who believed in him. Jackson's way of handling Rodman showed what made him a great coach. He found balance where others saw only trouble. Together, they won 3 straight championships. It was never smooth, never normal, but somehow Phil turned one of basketball's wildest players into a perfect piece of a legendary team. So, which one surprised you the most? Drop your thoughts in the comments, and don't forget to like and subscribe for more basketball stories like this one.